Well, I've introduced you guys to this machine in the past, and now we are sitting at 100 hours. The introduction video to this machine was when I first bought it. This was a tank. I still feel like I'm driving a tank with this thing it's just incredible. This Toro ZMaster 4000 zero-turn mower took my mowing from over 6 hours to just about 3 hours. So completely cut the amount of time it took me to mow in half. Not only that, it's much more nimble, much more fun, much more powerful. I have a wider cutting path than what I was using before. Yeah, this thing is incredible. But just like on my vehicles, my Suburbans, my Envoy, I have to keep up on the oil changes. Now, I've already changed the oil on this thing multiple times. I think 2 or 3 times already. And we just hit 100.1 hours on this thing. So I'm gonna change it again. Now, it's been sitting for over a week, so I'm gonna go ahead and give this thing a cold start. I'm gonna pull up on the choke. So here we go, let's crank it. Sometimes it takes a second to start. I actually like when that happens because it allows some of that oil to flow through the engine before it fully gets started. There we go. Push down on the choke there, and I usually let it warm up for a minute or 2 before I give it some more revs. Now here's the products I'm going to be using to change this oil. You can see I have factory Kawasaki 4-cycle engine oil. This is a synthetic blend oil that contains zinc. And I also have a factory Kawasaki oil filter. If we look at the back of my Kawasaki engine's manual here, you can see the 2 times in the past that I have changed the oil. The first time was at 15.3 hours. The second time was at 54 hours. So I'm kind of wanting to stick to this 50-hour mark, this time doing it at 100 hours, and next time I'll be doing it at 150 hours. If we look in the book here, the factory recommends changing the oil every 100 hours or 1 year, whichever comes first. Now, there's obviously nothing wrong with that recommendation. I just don't mow as much as a commercial guy would be mowing, which is what this mower is. It's a commercial mower. I do have a lot of grass to mow, but I definitely won't be hitting that 100-hour mark before the season is over. So honestly, I can't see anything wrong with changing the oil more often than you need to, other than, of course, the cost involved to do this maintenance, which looks like it was about $71 for an air filter, 3 quarts of oil, and the oil filter. But the thing is, I want this mower to last forever. And I think the #1 way to achieve that is to change that oil. In this mower, we have the Kawasaki FX801V. You can see one of the valve covers here, and if we look way on the other side there, you can see the other valve cover as well. Right here is the dipstick, which you would just unscrew to check the oil level. And because it's been running, the oil is all over this dipstick, so I would normally wipe it off and then recheck it. And interestingly, this is the oil drain port. It's a tube coming off of the engine, and we have a screw here on the end that we simply unscrew, drain out the oil. Now you can also see this oil filter right here. This is pretty simple and easy to get to. Now I moved the end of that tube right here over my drain bucket, and I have my 11/16, so I'm gonna back it up with this one here. And if I remember last time, this was pretty tight. There we go. And there goes that used oil. And you can see this oil, even though it only has roughly 40 hours on it, it is still decently dark. With oil this color, I definitely think it's ready to be changed. The thing is, with these zero-turn mowers, these engines are meant to be run at full throttle the entire time you're mowing. One of the reasons why they need to be at full throttle, if you look here, right inside of the frame rail, you can see the ZT 4400 hydro gear. These are hydraulically driven gears. This is how the tires move forward and backward. And in order to get the proper hydraulic with pressure and cooling, that engine has to be running at full speed. Now, because these engines run at full speed, they do need this very specialized oil that contains the zinc, and also this oil cooler you see right here. There is air that runs from the engine and through this oil cooler, so this always has to be maintained and cleaned. Now, I don't need to do this, but because I want to make sure I'm draining all of the oil out of this thing, I'm gonna go ahead and lift the front up just a little bit, just for a little while, and then I'll put it back down. I'm just trying to make sure that all of the residual oil in that pan gets drained out. While that oil's draining, I'm gonna show you this air filter, which is pretty cool. Because this is a commercial unit, we have a dual air filter system. Here's the outside air filter, which I'm gonna go ahead and pull off here. And I can already see that this air filter is ready for replacement. Definitely still has some life in it, but I don't like to leave an air filter that's this dirty in there for long. Now you can see inside of this is another air filter. Now this air filter doesn't get changed every time. We have our main filtration here. This is just a secondary air filtration system. So I haven't yet changed this. This is still the one from the factory. I don't really see any dust or any dirt on this thing, so I'm gonna go ahead and leave this in here. Now here is that brand new air filter that's going on in place of this dirty one, and now hopefully you can tell the major difference in how much dirt this old air filter actually has in it. And this new air filter simply slides right over that inner filter, and you just press it in and twist it at the same time just to make sure that it's fully seated. I'm going to clean off the drain plug a little bit just to inspect that rubber O-ring and make sure that everything is still looking good, no cracks. It all looks good. And now I'll just tighten it just like that. I'm now going to be removing this oil filter. Hopefully I can do it by hand is what I was going to say. And yes, I can. I do have a rag under here because this is going to drip oil. Hopefully not a lot. Okay, spin off, come on. There we go. Taking a closer look inside, you can see the surface that the oil filter gets screwed onto. I just want to inspect to make sure everything looks okay and there's no gasket left on that surface. And here's my new Kawasaki branded oil filter. I'm going to take some fresh, clean oil that I have in this cap here and put it right on this gasket on the new filter. And my new filter with the new oil applied to that gasket, definitely do not want to cross thread this. Don't force anything. You can see as I'm turning this, it's very freely moving onto those threads. That means nothing is cross-threaded. And once that's a little bit tight, give it another quarter turn. Just like that. It's finally time to actually add the oil, and I'm looking in the manual again, and it says we need 2.4 quarts when the oil filter is removed. All right, so I'll pull out this dipstick and set it aside. I'll grab my funnel, making sure that it's clean. And since I know I need more than 2 quarts, I can easily just add these 2 quarts of oil right down the hatch. Well, there's one. And I do have a leftover quart from the last time I did an oil change. It's not quite the 0.4 of a quart that we need here, but I'm gonna go ahead and use it. It's probably 10 ounces when I'm looking at the gauge here on the side. I'll just go ahead and pour the rest of this in. And that way I know I'm close. I can start the engine, run it, check the oil, and top off as needed. Now I'm going to pull out the funnel and replace the dipstick. At this point, I've completely changed the oil and the air filter, and it's time to start it up. I'm first doing one last final inspection, going over everything that I just took care of. My dipstick is back in and screwed tight. My oil filter is on. There is no oil leaking out of that. And my oil drain plug is screwed back tight, and there's no oil leaking anywhere. I'll go ahead and pull the choke up and give it a start. I've got it revved up just a little bit here. The engine now has had some time to warm up a little bit, circulate that oil, so I'll let it sit for a while before I check the oil level. The machine has now had time to sit. I'm gonna pull the dipstick. I'm gonna wipe it off this first time. I'm gonna place it back in, not turning it on the threads, because on that dipstick it says don't turn it on the threads in order to check the proper level. I'll pull it back out and look at my levels, and they are perfect. It shows right at that third dot, right at that full line My oil is exactly where it needs to be. And that's it, my friends. A full oil change and air filter service at 100 hours on a Toro ZMaster 4000. Routine maintenance. Sounds boring, but the fact is it's absolutely vital to the longevity of the machine that you're maintaining. Just like our bodies, if we want to be able to perform at our absolute best, mentally, physically, we have to feed ourselves good nutrition. The machines we operate are no different. If they take oil, they need oil changes. Whether it be a lawnmower or a vehicle like these, you've seen on my channel many times videos relating to oil changes. And the reason why is, number one, I like changing the oil on my equipment. Number two, it's probably the most important thing you can do to maintain your machinery, your equipment. I say go with what the factory recommends. Use the correct weight oil, whether it's 5W30 for this GMC I'm sitting on right here, or it's 10W30, or was that 10W40? For my lawnmower. Regardless, use what the manufacturer says. The manufacturer knows best. And as for oil change intervals, with some of these newer vehicles coming out these days, you might see 10, 15,000 mile intervals. That's one area that's a little bit iffy for me. I don't know if I would ever, especially on a brand new vehicle. I understand the tolerances are much tighter. I understand the oils that we're using these days are much better. But why would you go that long without changing your oil? Any vehicle, any machine is going to slowly consume oil over time. That oil is going to get dirty. Those additives are going to dissipate. I think we should change our oil a lot sooner than say 10 or 15,000 miles. I mean, it just makes sense to me anyway. That being said, I drive older vehicles. Why do I drive older vehicles? Well, they are simple. Much more simple to maintain, much easier to maintain. I can climb right underneath this truck, reach right up, grab that oil filter, and change that. Change the oil in no time at all. And that's how it is, not only for this 95 Suburban, but also for that 2003 Suburban sitting just off camera, and also my wife's 2005 GMC Envoy, although that one is a little bit harder because there's a panel I have to remove and the oil filter is a little deeper inside there. But still relatively easy. This Toro zero-turn mower, extremely simple to change the oil. I don't know if I would ever buy a vehicle where the oil change is difficult. If there was a newer vehicle that I was interested in and I'm looking at, one of the first things I'm gonna do is check how easy it is to change the oil. If, for example, there is no oil dipstick, so I can just reach in and check the condition of the oil and the level of the oil, that vehicle is probably out right there. I understand there's electronics and computers and all this stuff nowadays, but I think I trust myself with an oil dipstick more than I trust a computer and a sensor inside of an oil pan over time. Anyways, guys, let me know if you agree with me down in the comments section below. The oil, which you have seen on my channel many times in the past, is the number one thing, the number one way you can improve the longevity of any piece of machinery you have, whether it be your vehicle, your lawnmower, an air compressor, who knows what. If it takes oil, it needs an oil change. With that being said, always follow your manufacturer's recommended methods for changing your oil. Do not listen to me. Do your own research, come to your own conclusions, do your own due diligence. The manufacturer knows best when it comes to maintaining that engine, that piece of machinery, whatever it is. The manufacturer will tell you how often the oil changes need to be, what type of oil to use, what weight of oil to use, all that stuff. Follow their advice. I hope you enjoyed this one. I'm Jimmy for One Road, and I will see you in the next one.